Good morning, everybody. My name is Ria. I am still a compulsive overeater, still a bulimic. And today we are talking about step 3. Step 3, I think might be my favorite. I don't know. That's like asking to pick which kid you love the most. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. But maybe because I have to do step 3 so much, I know it the best. But anyway, before I even start talking about step 3, I actually want to read step 3 out of the big book. There's a whole section about it in the big book, and I think it explains it really well. And it's not so long, so maybe what we'll do is a little little line by line discussion of the text, because it really, for me, kind of puts it all in perspective and ties it together. Okay, so I'm looking at page 60, and in the middle of the page, it starts with our description. So if you are going to read along in the big book, that is where we're going to begin, okay? Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. First of all, I just love the word adventures. That's such a great word. It's not it's a heavy situation in terms of recovery, and our addiction is very serious, but this is an adventure, guys. We get to there. I don't know about you. When I was a kid, there were these books called Choose Your Own Adventures. Do you know what do you guys have them in the UK? I don't know. We Americans, we're very independent people. So we like to, literally choose how the story goes. So there was this thing where you open up the book and you read the first chapter. And then at the end of the chapter, it says, if you want this to happen, turn to this page. If you want this to happen, turn to that page. I loved it when I was a kid because you literally get to choose your own adventure. And this book is a choose your own adventure, except in this case, there are 2 choices: do the steps or die. So it's a pretty limited, turn to this page if you want to actually, get better. And if you want to die, just close the book. Simple. Okay. So it makes clear 3 pertinent ideas. So we've said this numerous times as we've studied this book, that we cannot have a spiritual experience, and we cannot these steps will not work unless we have the foundation of a full step 1 experience followed by a step 2 experience. The only step that we can take perfectly is step 1. That's it. That's the only one. Everything else we're going to do our absolute best and give it the old college try. But step 1 has to be set in stone, and they're going to say this now. Okay? 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. So that's 2 pieces, right? As we know, there's 2 pieces in step 1 also, right? It says that we were powerless over alcohol or food, that our lives had become unmanageable. And we've talked about this. The idea here is that alcohol or food, when introduced into our system, kicks off a physical reaction, a hypersensitivity, which is another word for allergy, that we cannot control. But that is not the cause of our lives being unmanageable. In fact, it is the inverse. Our lives are unmanageable. It is extremely uncomfortable for people like you and me. And so we medicate that discomfort with food, which kicks off that phenomenon of craving. And then that becomes the main loudest problem. And we think that that's the real problem. And then once we put the food down, we think everything's great. But we forget that we actually were only taking medication away. They talk about this earlier in the book too. The idea of a man who's hitting himself on the head with a hammer to get rid of a headache, So when you see a man hitting himself on the head with a hammer, you go, whoa, 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 stop. And you take the hammer away and he's not hitting himself anymore. And you go, oh, thank God. He's not, he's okay. He's not okay. He still has the headache. He's now we have to give him something else. Otherwise he's going to walk around with a migraine. And my dad gets migraines. And when he gets migraines, all the lights the drapes need to be shut. Everything needs to be closed. No light. This isn't like a little headache you take a paracetamol for. This is a major headache. So what they're saying here is that not only do we have this powerlessness, but even without the thing that we're using, our lives are going to keep driving us back if we don't find another way to live. So now that we know that we don't have power over our lives or the food, we go to idea B, which is that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And for a lot of us, our research, and we talk about this a lot in the Tuesday group, data and evidence, right? Once we've done this experiment enough times, we have enough data and evidence to show that we are powerless and cannot handle this ourselves. I don't know about you, but by the time I was 20 years old, I had done enough diets and tried enough things on my own power and had spoken to medical professionals and all the human people to try to help me with this thing, and no one could. So over and over, the evidence showed that no human power, no medication, no nothing could help me with this. And I see it even in people who, there's somebody in my extended family who I've known for a very, very long time. This person has lost and gained 100 pounds at least 3-4 times since I've known them. And I've known them for 2 decades at this point. And has even had surgeries, the sleeve on the stomach, all those things. And this person's still struggling with their weight, still struggling with food, because it's a human power. It's these things, quote unquote, work temporarily, but it's like putting a Band-Aid on cancer. They don't solve the problem. Okay. So we have to get to that point where we realize there's a problem, that's A, and then B, that we can't fix it ourselves. And no human can do it either. For some of us, we have to be in a lot of pain and hit a wall many, many times for that to become clear. For someone like me, I thank God every single day that it became clear to me by the time I was 20 something. And maybe it's just because I am a ambitious person, or because I don't do things halfway, that I was like, well, if I'm going to be an addict, I'm going to almost kill myself by the time I'm 20 years old. So I saw very quickly what the facts were, but I didn't have words for it until I came into this program, because no one else out there is going to articulate, number one, what this problem is, because people still don't know what, food addiction and compulsive eating and body obsession and restricting, all of those things are. Yeah, sure, we have terms in the DSM for what those things look like. But the actual problem, no, nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about the fact that we have a spiritual condition we're medicating with food, or without food. And then nobody out there is saying, yeah, and God's going to help you. Have you ever met anyone? Has a doctor ever written you a prescription for God? I don't know, not me. I've never had that ever. Okay. So it wasn't until I came to this program and people started naming the problem and then giving me a solution that I was like, oh, okay, fine. So now I have 1 and 2 covered. I recognize that I have a problem and that I can't fix it by myself. Now we're going to C, that God could and would if he were sought. Okay. Now, again, I know some people take umbrage with the male pronouns here, and that's totally okay. But remember, we're looking for a way in, not a way out. So we're going to focus on the message and the words. We can say, listen, we are humans and we cannot think of things beyond pronouns because our brains can't comprehend what God is. We are too small to understand something beyond he, she, they. So we could say she, we could say they, it doesn't matter. But we understand that that's not even what God is. And we all know that. We just don't have a better word for it. I say this all the time. You can call God garlic. You can call God broccoli. You can call God Beyonce if you want. I don't care. Like, it's just a word to refer to a thing that has no name that we can actually use. I mean, even in, like, as you all know, I'm Jewish. There's a word in Hebrew that we use for God. It literally means the name, because we don't have a name. We don't know. There's no way. So it's the same thing. God, whatever God is, could and would help us if he, she, they, it, whatever, were sought. So that's already a very big claim. There's 2 claims there. 1, God's going to help us. And the condition is that we have to seek God. And we have to come to that belief. And I see that for a lot of people, that's where a wall hits, because either they have past God trauma, religious trauma, and we're addicts, right? We want it to be our idea. So the end of step 2 is realizing that there is a power greater than me, and that power will help me if I ask for help. I've heard it said, God is a gentleman. He doesn't walk into rooms where he's not invited. You could also say God is a lady. She doesn't walk into rooms where she's not invited. Personally, I like to think of a woman who will bust through doors and walk into wherever she wants to go, because I like to be that kind of lady. But God understands that if God does that, we've lost our autonomy. I would way rather be with someone who wants me than someone who's forcing me to be with them, right? That's not a relationship then. I have to show that I'm interested. And that comes with step 3, which we're going to get to. Great. So here we go. So now being convinced, right? So this is actually like a process that we've been through before we can even get to step 3. But 1 and 2 have to be pretty solid. 1 for sure has to be rock solid. 2 has to be pretty solid before we get to 3. That said, I remember when I did these steps with a sponsor of mine at the time, and we were about to take step 3, and I said, I don't mean this. And she said, that's okay. Just say it and start acting as if, right? I just had an experience with my sponsor on Friday where I wrote down some character defects and some lies I was telling myself that were getting me into some trouble. And she said, great, now you're going to write what it looks like when you live like that and go rehearse. Like, I may not be able to be the source of that change, but I at least need to start acting as if I believe the change is possible. So that's what step 3 is. We've established that there's a problem. Now, let's say, like, I think of like the two, the story of Hansel and Gretel. We all know the story of Hansel and Gretel. Yeah. I used to love that story because, like, hello, a house made of cookies. Let's go. But like, Hansel and Gretel are lost in the woods. They're trying to find their way. They're lost. And all of a sudden they find the place. They find a place that they're supposed to go. And we're not talking about the witch's house now. Let's just say there's like a nice house. And they've come to the door. So there's a way in. They see it. But now they have to knock. The door's not going to automatically open for them. They have to knock on the door or no one's going to answer. Now, we don't know what's in the house. We don't know who's going to be there. We don't know what's going to happen. But all we know is that there are wolves in the forest, and there are bad things that have happened, and we've already, been lost, and we're hungry and tired. Like, the forest is not working. So let's go in the house. Let's see what happens, because I can't stay like this anymore, right? So here we go. Being convinced, we were at step 3. We've arrived there, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. Once again, him, her, it, they, she, whatever, take your pick. Don't use any of them. I don't care. But don't let semantics get in the way of you relating with God. People get lost in that argument for years, and I'm not joking, and they get in the way of their own recovery. Just be willing to be open to an idea that's bigger than our own human understanding, okay? And I also don't have the energy at this point to fight with the majority of white men in 1939 who wrote this book, who had a certain conception or a certain, demographic. Like, I'm not going to sit there and get angry about this or let that color my perspective, because I need help. And these guys are going to help me. When I'm in the forest and I knock on the door, if someone opens it and I don't like their outfit, I'm not going to not go in. You know what I mean? Just because I don't like your fashion choices doesn't mean that you don't have something to offer me. So just because these guys were white guys living in Ohio in 1939, like, ew, the Midwest, are you kidding? Like, no, we're going to just listen to what they have to say because they have a solution. I don't. So I have to listen to them. Okay? So we turn our will and our life. So those are two very different things, right? Our will is our desire, our ambition, our conceptions, what we want. And then our life is everything that happens as a result of that, right? So we turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. And the as we understood him, by the way, is the result of one AA member, and his story's in the back, who made a big stink for a really long time about how we should be able to say God as we understood him. You can't just say God because not everybody believes in God, and I'm an atheist. But fine. God as we understood him is not an exclusionary phrase. It opens the door more. So be an atheist. I know people with very, very, very strong programs who genuinely don't believe in God, but they do believe in the power of the steps. And the power of the steps is a power greater than you. Whatever it is. Okay, the power that we have together right now can be God. Doesn't matter. But whatever it is that you understand, we're trying to opt in, not out. Okay? Okay, so just what do we mean by that? And just what do we do? Remember, we're talking about doing, action, right? The chapter after this is into action. It's not into thinking or into discussion, it's into action. So it's always, what are we doing with this information? Okay, the first requirement for step 3 is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. So we've already talked about turning our will over, right? So before this, we've been running on self-will. That's what they're saying here. They're saying we have been trying our whole lives to run our lives ourselves, and it's not working. So let's see. On that basis, we are almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. Most people try to live by self-propulsion. The word propulsion, right? I think about like a boat in the water, and you're pedaling, using the paddle and trying to go. That's exhausting. Like I watch those rowers. I don't know. Do you guys have crew in England? Is that a thing? Yeah, crew. I don't know. Yeah, you guys like had boats before we did. But anyway, so like, when you're rowing I don't know how those rowers do that. That is really hard. Can you imagine trying to do that anywhere you go all the time? It's exhausting. And imagine every other person trying to row at the same time in the same river as you. Your boats are going to crash into each other. Just how it is. Each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show. Is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. So I've told this story before. Some of you may have heard it, but when I was in high school, I did theater. Can you imagine? And I was involved in my high school. They hired a professional director to come in and run our theater department. It's a big deal. This man walks in and I look at him and go, thanks for coming. I'll take it from here. I'm 16 years old, okay? And I'm like, no, I know better. So I start telling people how the show should go. And can I tell you what a great director I was? I'm at one of my friends who was part of that theater group. I was so brutal to people. She's now a veterinarian. She will never set foot on a stage ever again in her life. I can guarantee you that. That's the kind of director I was. But really, I was just trying to make the show good. Like, if you guys just do what I say, the show is going to be amazing. Why aren't you listening to me? That's what we do with our lives. And not just you, but me. My life would be great if A happens, if B happens, if you acted like this, if you chose to be like this, if everything worked out like I imagine it will be, everything would be great. And then I spend my life trying to arrange my life to look like that. Can you imagine how exhausting that is? I think about so years ago, my brother taught me to play chess and I've since forgotten, but my son really likes to play chess. And there are so many, apparently there are millions of different plays that can happen on a chessboard. Think about that. How many different ways that these little pieces can be moved around on a chessboard. And the possibilities are infinite. And yet I'm sitting there trying to figure out the perfect way to move these pieces so that it ends up exactly the way that I want it to. And then I have somebody else on the other side of the board who's doing the same thing. Can you imagine? That's really exhausting. Okay. If his arrangements would only stay put, if people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. So this is a prevailing lie that we tell ourselves, that every human really tells him or herself, which is, my life will be okay and I will be okay if A happens. If I have this much money in my bank account, if my body looks like this, if I find a man, if I find a woman, if I have that job, if I have this many followers on Instagram. There's always a thing that if this condition is met, I will be okay. I will be enough. And you should know, I'm speaking from very, very, very clear recent experience, like yesterday, okay? This is what we do. We find these benchmarks that we fixate on and say, if my life looked like that, I'll be okay. And I will be safe and in control. For me, for many years, it was if I was thin, right? If I was thin, I would have a normal life and all the men would want me and the credits of my romantic comedy would roll and everybody would be great. The end. But then I got thin and I was still uncomfortable and miserable. So I did the thing. So what's the problem? So we're going to find out. Okay. In trying to make these arrangements, our actor may sometimes be quite virtuous. He may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. On the other hand, he may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and honest. But with most humans, he is more likely to have varied traits. So I lean more toward the domineering side. But there are people who are really nice in trying to get what they want. And they're so nice. they're just as manipulative as anybody else because they're trying to get what they want out of people, even when they're doing it for you. I just want you to be happy. I just want you to be okay. And they're not lying. They genuinely have the best, other people's best interests at heart. You know why? Because when you feel better, I'll be okay. Like the people in, especially my immediate family, I'm a mom, right? So when my kids aren't okay, and I'm a Jewish mom, okay? So when my kids aren't okay, oh my God, the world is off of its axis. Like, no, my children must be okay and fed at all times, right? So like, all of a sudden, out of the best intentions, I just want my kids to be happy. I just want you to be okay. I just want everything to be okay. When really it's, I don't want you to suffer because that hurts me. And I am uncomfortable with that. And I cannot deal with discomfort. That's hard, but it's the truth. I mean it. I want them to be happy, but really I'm just trying to make me feel okay. It's the same thing. Okay. So here we go. What usually happens? The show doesn't come off very well. That's for damn sure, right? Because we just heard we're in collision with people. He begins to think life doesn't treat him right. Self-pity. He decides to exert himself more, so more self-will. He becomes on the next occasion still more demanding or gracious, as the case may be. And now the next sentence, which in my opinion is the second most important sentence in the book. This is just my opinion. Everybody has opinions about this, but this sentence, still the play does not suit him. Okay? That sentence is alcoholism in a nutshell. It is not the addiction to alcohol. It is the overriding sense at all times that even when everything is lined up exactly as it should be, quote unquote, there's something still missing here. There's still something off. Something's wrong. Something's missing. That is my problem. And because I have that essential feeling of something being off, I will constantly try to control outside circumstances so I can fix that feeling, when actually it's really just a spiritual misalignment. And I need God to fix that. And we talked, I don't remember if we talked about it in this workshop or my Tuesday workshop, but basically Carl Jung talked about it, how it's essentially a person's thirst for God. That discomfort is that sense of disconnection, of missing something, because we're missing God. And we don't get that. And so we think it's circumstantial. And it's not, because sometimes we nail it and we get those circumstances and we're still uncomfortable. And we're like, why? Like I said with my weight, and I'll tell you now what I'm going through. By my profession is I'm a writer. I write books for other people. I write for myself. And I also have a thing on social media. So on paper, I'm doing very well. My social media is growing and growing and growing, and people know who I am. I finished a novel a few months ago. I got picked up by an agent. My agent's trying to sell the book. I'm about to finish another book. Like, everything's rolling. It's good. And you know what? I've never been more uncomfortable. And I'm not talking about like on par with when I lost weight and I was like, what the hell is happening? That's why I had to do step work the other day, because I realized, oh, I accomplished the thing I've wanted to do my entire life. And on paper, like, I'm having all the things that they say you're supposed to have. Like, oh, all these people follow you. Blah, blah, blah. Who gives a shit? Because I'm still uncomfortable. It didn't fix me because I'm still an alcoholic. And when I'm chasing those things and thinking they're going to be the thing that finally I've arrived, right? Bill talks about that. I have arrived. What do you mean I have arrived? We're going, climbing, hoping we're going to hit the destination. What's the destination? Not that you've just arrived, that I'm enough. I did it. It's okay. Everybody's okay now. I have my ducks in a row and I'm connected. I'm home. That's what we want. We want to come home and feel like, oh, okay, everything's okay now. Nothing out there is going to do that for me. Even the things that everyone says are going to do it for me. And you hear it a lot from people who have accomplished major things. I think the actor Jim Carrey talks about this, how he wishes everybody could become super successful and famous like he was, because they will see that it's not it. And I mean, obviously, I'm nowhere near famous as Jim Carrey, and I hope to never be as famous as Jim Carrey. But the point is that even getting like a small taste of whatever I'm experiencing now career-wise, like it's not doing it because that's not real. That's not what my soul wants. That's not what my essence is. And I'm a sick person. So I will glom onto those things thinking that those are the things I'm supposed to be putting my energy into. When actually I'm supposed to be putting my energy into this, into what we're doing, and to seeking more God. Because otherwise I'm going to get back to that place over and over of what Dr. Silkworth calls the restless, irritable, and discontent, or the something's off with me thing. Fundamentally, something's off with me. I remember one time I saw this video with Nicole Kidman. Nicole Kidman won the Oscar, like this is like 20 years ago or something. And at that point, she was between marriages. And she said she won the Oscar. She went to her hotel room. She said it was the loneliest night of her life. That should tell you something. It tells me something, I should say. Like, this is, I mean, at least 20 years ago it was. Now I don't know. But 20 years ago, that's like the pinnacle of our social currency, right? Like, you're thin, you're rich, you're famous, you're awarded. Everybody thinks that you're the greatest thing in the world, and they gave you a literal trophy for it. And then you go home and you go, well, what is this? I'm by myself. It's because fundamentally, nothing out there, even the most high achievements, cannot give us what we're truly looking for, which is a deep spiritual connection. That's why still the play does not suit him, sort of gets everything. And the truth is, and I can experience this now, I just hit a certain benchmark in my career. I will move that benchmark so fast. Yeah, but when I get there, then it'll be okay. Okay, so big deal, I did that, but now I got to do this. There's no sense of arrival because it still doesn't do the thing that I'm waiting for it to do. Okay? Admitting he may be somewhat at fault, right? God forbid we actually take responsibility. Admitting he may be somewhat at fault, he is sure that other people are more to blame, right? We keep looking at outside circumstances. If only you did this, if only this was this, then I'll feel better. He becomes angry, indignant, and self-pitying. And by the way, I'm a professional self-pitier, so if you want tips with that, just send me a DM. I'll teach you exactly how to do it. What is his basic trouble? What's the problem? Is he really not a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? Is he not a victim of the delusion, right? A delusion, like I had the definition of this in my other copy of my big book, but basically it's like an insane perception of things, right? A delusion, a perception of something not real, being real, that he can wrest. To wrest something means to pull from another's grasp. Think about that, okay? And also it's like a key for tuning a harp or a piano, that the note is just off. And if I could just turn it, then it'll be the right note, right? He can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if he only manages well, right? He believes that if he just tunes things just right, then it will be okay. Is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things he wants? It's like, hello, do you not see, like, this is the Rhea show. Why are you not doing what I said? And do not his actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show? I mean, think about it. If every human being is in the world trying to run their own show, I mean, Exhibit A, look at the world. Look at the way that countries go after each other. Look at the way that our society is shaped, how people are terrible to each other. It's because we're all trying to run our own shows. You know, I think it's the Rhea show. Joe may be running the Joe show. Caroline's running the Caroline show. And then we're going, wait, get out of my show. What are you doing? This is the state of the world. This is how we operate. And lucky for us, it almost kills us. So we have to find another way to live. For most people, they can skirt by and they can tell themselves that everyone else lives like this too. And they'll just be like low grade unhappy for their lives. For us, it's a matter of life and death. So aren't we lucky that we get to do it differently? Okay. And do not his actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show, right? If you have it, then I lost it. So I need to get it back from you because there's not enough for everybody. Is he not, even in his best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony? Our actor is self-centered, egocentric, as people like to call it nowadays. He is like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining of the sad state of the nation. The minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century, politicians and reformers who are sure all would be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave. the outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him, and the alcoholic who has lost all and is locked up. Whatever our protestations are, not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, or our self-pity. So if you look at all of these examples of people, they're all people who are looking outside themselves and blaming outside circumstances for their problems. I mean, think about it. Imagine being Jeff Bezos. And I have no judgment of Jeff Bezos. I'm sure he's a very nice guy. But imagine Jeff Bezos laying on a mountain of his billions of dollars and then saying like, oh, these governments can't get it together to like feed everyone. Now, Jeff Bezos can do whatever he wants with his money. But if Jeff Bezos is specifically complaining about people not having food and you're sitting on billions of dollars, are you part of the problem or are you part of the solution? See what I'm saying? Again, not judging Jeff Bezos specifically. He can do whatever he wants with his money. It's his. But the point is, if I'm sitting there with capacity and with my own sense of disconnection, but I'm sitting and going, it's your fault, then I am the problem. I am the problem. You know, it says here, ministers who sigh over the sins of the 20th century. Well, guess what? I'm sorry to say it, but there are clergy people of all religions who are certainly, you know, not free of sin. Like it's all their fault. It's all the people, all the followers, all the mere mortals who are sinning, who are part of the problem. Well, what are you doing to help them? And what about your scorecard, friend? Are you actually living up to your full spiritual potential? Politicians and reformers who are sure all would be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave. I don't know. When's the last time you saw a politician who behaved himself? Like, come on now. The outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him. There's a thing in California now. This is the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. In California, there is a law that you can walk into a store and shoplift up to, I believe, $1,000, and the police cannot arrest you. I'm not joking. I'm not making this up. You can Google it after this, okay? Can you imagine being someone like that, walking into a store, shoplifting $1,000, $1,001, and then the police come and put you in jail? And then you go, how could you do that? The police just threw me in jail. Friend, you just shoplifted. Like this is literally what we do. We create the problem and then blame other people for the solution because this is the state of things, because there are natural consequences to our actions, right? Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. That is a very bold statement, guys. They are not saying that alcohol or food is our problem. They are saying that we are our problem. Our perception of the world and what we think should be, quote unquote, and our obsession with getting what we want and making things happen the way we think they should is what gets us in trouble. Because that is what creates that imbalance, that discontent, and that overriding feeling that something's wrong that I have to fix. And so we go and try to fix it, and then we collide with other people. So it starts with us always. Our problem is always us. Now, that's not to say, by the way, because we all, and I want to be careful with this because I've heard so many people say, oh, but in 4 steps, they blame the victim. And, you know, if somebody hurts you, like you're taking responsibility. Okay, I'm going to just name this now. And I've said it before, but I'll say it again. There are things that happen to people that are really, really difficult. There are people who are abused. There are people who are assaulted. No one's blaming victims in any form for what happens to them. Okay? At least I'm not. And I don't think the 12 steps do either. If God forbid a child is, you know, abused by an adult, that's not the child's fault. They didn't do anything. If a woman goes to a bar and on the way home, God forbid, someone grabs her and assaults her, it's not because of what she was wearing. She didn't do anything wrong. Okay? I need to be very clear about this because that's not the problem. It is 100% wrong, and I wish it didn't happen to anybody. Unfortunately, it does. The problem is not what happened. The problem is what we do with what happens. Now, I am not saying that a person should not go through grief and horror and all of those things as a result of those experiences themselves. But if I am living in a world for the next 20, 30, 40 years in which I am now I'm acting out of what happened to me 25 years ago and trying to create a world in which it didn't happen, that is the root of my problem. Does that make sense? Am I clear about this? Because I'm not saying that you did anything wrong when it happened. But if I am living and trying to create a circumstance in which the thing that happened to me didn't happen, I am living in a delusion and I am feeding my own addiction. Okay? I just want to be very, very clear about this. If anybody is still unclear or wants to really discuss this, feel free to reach out to me privately. But I want to really say that because, when we say, oh, it's our problem, we're the problem, we're the problem. Yes, we are. And also we can acknowledge that things happen that are difficult to deal with. But at the end of the day, it's what kind of, do we want that? Can we afford to let that thing block us from recovery? That's the bottom line. Okay. Now, obviously, if it happened yesterday, no one's expecting you to say, oh, okay, I'm over it and I'm going to trust God. And it takes time. These things take time. But at the end of the day, what perceptions do I have about how the world should be and how my life should have gone and what the past should have been that are blocking me from living in God's will? Okay. Sometimes it takes time to work through, but I have to at least be willing to consider other ideas. Fine. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some time in the past, we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. And this can be a lot more subtle than we think. For example, there was a time in my life where I had a difficult relationship with my father, which thank God is 100% healed. And we're in a really, really different, like we talk on the phone every day now. It's amazing. But there was a point where it was really painful for me to talk to him. And every time something would happen, it wouldn't be because he did something bad. It would be because I expected him to be someone else. I expected him to act out of character, even though I knew who his character was. But my father was working with the tools that he had. And only after I had conversations with him about what I needed and gave him new tools, my father, I believe, so I have a son who's on the autism spectrum, and as they say, ducks have ducks. So it is my belief, and I'm not a scientist, but these things are genetic. And if you told me my father was on the autism spectrum, it would not surprise me. Socially, he's a genius, and he has one side of his brain that ate the other side of his brain. And so he can do math like with no numbers in it, but like social stuff is very difficult for him. And he needs to be taught what to do and what to say and how to act. And I didn't understand that for many, many years. And so when he didn't do the thing that I assumed he should be able to do, I would get resentful about it. But really, he was just being himself. And so the decision I made placed me in a position to be hurt. And things changed when I was willing to do it differently and sit down and have a conversation with him and say, Dad, I know that you're dealing with A, B, and C, but here's what I need. And here's what I think you can do to help. And I'll tell you something, he got it, because you give someone clear directions, then they have the choice to follow them or not. But if I don't give directions and then expect him to follow them, that's on me. See what I'm saying? Okay. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. And again, I'm not talking about something that happens to somebody that is like 100% somebody else. But even that thing that happens, it might be somebody else's responsibility, but what I do with it is mine. Okay? They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. And we've explained why this kills us already. Because when we have that restless, irritable, and discontent, we need to medicate it with food, which kicks off the phenomenon of craving, which will slowly kill us. Okay, so we could say, what do you mean? Like just not being spiritually connected will kill us? Yes, that's what they're saying. Again, a doctor will not write, find God on a prescription pad. At least most won't. But that's what they're saying here. Our own discontent, our own discomfort in whatever circumstance we're in is what brings us back to food. And so if we take the food away, we have to find a new way to live within our circumstances. And so it begins here. That's what they're saying. God makes that possible, right?
Ria, that's 40 minutes. Do you want me to time another 5 or?
5. Thank you, Sean. Yeah, perfect. God makes that possible. And there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. So again, it's like the powerlessness with the alcohol, right? Bill talks about this. Self-knowledge would fix it. Well, okay, now I've just said to you. So stop being selfish. Stop being self-centered. Go help people. I don't know about you, but like I did all the self-help books when I was still in the food. I wanted to be a spiritual person. I did all of that. I wanted to be more evolved and serene and all those things. I couldn't help but fall back into my old habits. It's just how I'm made. It's just how I'm built. I need something bigger than me. I'm just as powerless over my selfishness as I am over food. And I didn't get that. It's a lot more subtle, but that's what they're saying. We can't do this ourselves. Self-knowledge won't fix this either. We need a power greater than ourselves to lift us out of ourselves, right? I've said this before. Einstein said, we can't cure a problem with the same thinking that created it. So if I'm selfish and thinking about myself all the time, I can't think myself out of myself. I need something out of this paradigm to reach in and pull me out, because I can only work within this brain, right? Which is a fantastic and also super dangerous place to hang out in by myself. Okay? I say this to my son a lot because he, as I mentioned, he's on the autism spectrum, and I'm like, I would love a day to hang out in there just to like see what's going on. Like it looks like a lot of fun in there, you know? Anyway, many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them even though we would have liked to. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. I mean, think about there's a word in Hebrew, chutzpah, like the moxie, the nerve, like that's it. I have the power to not be selfish anymore. Like think about it. Like I can fix myself with myself. That's like, it's insane. It's an insane thing to think, you know? And that's not to say that there aren't like people who can like self-improve and like go to the gym or whatever, but like, I can't outthink my own thinking. It's not possible. We had to have God's help, period. This is the how and why of it. So now they're going to tell us how we're going to do that, right? We've established the problem. Now we're going to give the solution. That's the big book in a nutshell. This is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. Tender your resignation, ladies. Write a resignation letter if you have to. This is me acknowledging that I will no longer be filling this position. I'm taking a leave of absence. I'm just not in charge of this company anymore. Okay, because clearly this company is getting burned to the ground. I think there is a different kind of management system that will handle this better than me. It didn't work. So that's the first. We have to retire. We have to resign. Next, right? And next, when they say next, they don't mean in a year from now or one step a month. They mean right now. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. So we fire ourselves from the head of the company and we hire God to take over very quickly, right? He is the principal and we are his agents. An agent, and I've talked about this before, some of you have heard me say this, an agent is somebody who carries out a mission for a higher authority, like Charlie's Angels, right? We've talked about Charlie's Angels. Remember the show Charlie's Angels? Some of you may not have heard this. I'll say it again. Charlie's Angels. You have Charlie at the beginning of the show who comes in on the little speakerphone and he says, okay, angels, this is your mission. And then they go and do the mission. No problem. It's a great show. But if the angels are like, no, we're going to do our own mission, and then they fight with each other about what the mission should be, that's a really bad show. I would not watch that show. But that's what we do. God has a mission for us, and we go, yeah, no, I'm good. I have a better mission. And then every single other person is doing that too, and then wondering why. Why are you in my mission? Get out of my mission. This is my mission. Okay? So we have to relegate ourselves to being agents. We are angels, not Charlie. Okay? We are angels thinking we're Charlie right now, but we have to recognize that we are not Charlie. We are the angel. Okay? Also, they have really good wardrobes. I don't know why somebody wouldn't want to be an angel. Also, I'll say, thank God I'm not God. Can you imagine? Like, God, it's exhausting. I do not want to be in charge anymore. Okay, he is the father and we are his children. That's another dynamic, right? A father is someone, ideally, you know, I'll just talk about my father. My father is a wonderful father. He is an imperfect person, but he made it his business to provide his children with whatever they needed. and to get even more than that, everything they wanted. He is my number one fan. He just cheers me on and is excited when, you know, I mean, as most of you know, I live in Israel. So after October 7th, my father's called me every single day since October 7th. And we just talk on the phone every day. And because he wants to have a relationship with me. He wants me in his life. And I don't need to earn that. He's just happy to talk to me because I'm his daughter. That's like God. It's how I feel about my own children. I don't have to earn anything or be anything except myself to be in a relationship with God. God just wants to talk to me and call me every day. So yeah, okay, time's up. So I'm going to wrap up very quickly. And as a child, I trust that my father is going to give me what I need, what I want, and what's best for me. So that's a whole new dynamic than punishing or non-existent or neglectful, all of those things, right? So I have to revamp my perception of God. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. So after this, they go through all kinds of promises about what our lives look like after the third step prayer, and you're welcome to read it on page 63. And you can compare it to the bedevilments on page 52, which shows us what our life looks like without God. And then this one shows us what our life looks like with God. And since we're out of time, we're not going to be able to go through that today. And then in order to take step 3, the way you take it is with the prayer and the second paragraph on page 63. They say it right here. Okay. And I'm actually just going to say it quickly, and then we will wrap up for questions. Okay. So we were now at step 3. Many of us said to our maker as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt, or you wilt, you know, depending on what kind of semantics you like. Relieve me of the bondage of self, bondage like slavery, like constraint, that I may better do thy will, your will, not mine, buddy. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. Don't make it better just so I feel better. Make it better so I can show other people what you can do. May I do thy will always. Get me out of the way. Align my will with yours. We thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to him. And this, my friends, is a lifelong enterprise that I continue to do every day of my life. But as long as I'm trying, then I am working toward the solution. And that is all. Okay.